Are you still working at home and you have young kids? How are you managing your stress? How are you keeping your anxiety down? How do you juggle with homeschooling, working, keeping your house clean, go laundry, grocery shopping, and do everything that has to be done? So today I've invited Sarah Smith, my own business and mindset coach, to give us some tips. Thank you for joining, Sarah.
Oh, it's a real honor to be here, Gemma. Thank you so much.
All right, so last week we had a conversation because, we're working together and I have my own two children and I'm still working, trying to juggle everything. And I was totally overwhelmed. And because I am not a teacher, I have zero idea how to homeschool my children. I still have to work, I still have to cook, and it's just like, oh my gosh, way too much. But you gave me great tips that I wanted to share. So would you please share with us the tips that you gave me last week?
Yeah, for sure. So we covered a lot of different areas when we were talking last week. I think one of the areas we started on is just what kind of perspective do we want to take in this time? So for me personally, and like you, I am working from home. My partner is working from home, and I also have two school-age children who are home. What became really important for me as we kind of emerged into this new way of being, and as I really thought about it maybe lasting for a while, is figuring out what perspective I want to use in terms of figuring out how to manage through it. So one of the things that's been really helpful for me is to take a perspective out in the future. So long after this is all over, and we're back to whatever the new normal is, which will probably be more like the old normal than this current normal is. What do I want to be able to say about what was important and how I did things? And so I use that as a lens to sort of guide myself, right?
Okay.
So that's the first piece. Is it's really helpful for me to get out of like the current moment, whatever it is that's happening in the house, and go, okay, if I tell this story 5 years from now, how do I want that story to look?
That's good. That's good. You talked also to me a lot about mindset. And I know that our children are looking at us like a mirror, right? And they're definitely the reflection of what we are doing. Like the way we are reacting with the stress, everything that's happening right now, mindset is huge. And I would like your tip on this.
Yeah, so we do a lot of work around mindset, because really mindset is that collection of attitudes and beliefs that we actually choose for ourselves in terms of how we want to operate in the world and in relationship with people. And so because there's some choice around it, it means we have some control in what we want to believe and what our attitudes are. And some of the things that we've talked about are techniques and tricks and tips that we can use to try and choose, even in this time, maybe a more positive mindset. So I think what I shared with you are, exercises that really come out of the evidence-based world of positive psychology. Things like having a gratitude practice,
yes.
For example. So this is something that I encourage many of my clients to have on their own, some kind of gratitude practice. It could be that we journal at the end of the day, something we're grateful for. One of the things that I do actually with my family is at dinner time, we sit around the table and we alternate. One day we do gratitude. We have this little stone actually that has the word gratitude on it. I picked it up, I think, at a dollar store forever ago. And we pass it around 3 times. And so people come up with what they're grateful for. And it can literally be like, I'm just grateful there's something on this plate tonight that I don't hate, like, for a picky eater, right? To I'm really grateful that, our family is healthy. Like, it's all over the map. We do that 3 times. And the other exercise that we do on the alternating night is, again, a really evidence-based exercise called 3 What Went Wells. And so it's just what went well in the day today. And it could be the same kind of thing. Like, the internet didn't freeze in my interview with Gemma. What went well. I managed to get out of my pajamas today. It could be what went well, right? Or it could be something like, I was able to attend a a class for one of the kids in the online learning. I was able to actually get on and get the technology working. So we alternate that with the gratitudes as an example. And those are exercises which are proven, if we do it over time, actually build up new neural pathways in the brain to be more positive than sort of negative. So those are some examples around mindset.
What went well, for example, if I'm looking outside, it's snowing right now. So what went well is yesterday was not snowing. That was what went well.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yesterday it did, or I'm, despite it being snowing, I'm in a warm house today, or I have a warm sweater to put on, those kinds of things. Yeah, they can be very, very small things for sure. The other thing I think that I wanted to sort of mention around mindset and working with kids is this is actually a really important opportunity for parents to actually work in the realm of emotions with kids. So certainly we've talked about modeling positive mindset and positive kind of emotions, but the reality is that emotional intelligence, which, there's more and more research that's showing that, success in life is heavily dependent on our emotional intelligence, even more so than our intellectual intelligence. Emotional intelligence is really about being able to recognize in ourselves and in others the wide variety of different emotions, and then be able to manage with them with a degree of comfort. So this is an opportunity, if we are, as parents, feeling sad or a little afraid or something like that, to actually have a conversation around that. Mommy is feeling a bit sad right now. She misses, her friends. She misses, seeing grandma, whatever. I'm feeling a bit sad. I know it's not going to last forever, but I am feeling a little bit sad right now.
Yeah.
And so this idea of, naming emotions, to tame emotions, that kind of thing is really a really big gift we can actually give children right now.
It helps them also to show their own emotion and understand their own emotions. Okay.
Exactly. And helping them to name those emotions, as opposed to what often we want to do as parents is we want to stop the suffering of our children immediately.
That's right.
So we want to pull them out of it right away. Oh, you're missing your friends. Well, let's get them on Zoom. Let's get them, right? Instead of, this is really different. And it's kind of appropriate to feel a little bit sad when we're missing our friends.
We're trying to come up with this instant solution. You're right. Absolutely. And I do this all the time. So I need a solution here for parents. So in all of this, we have zero time to spend on ourselves, by ourselves. It's like next to non-existent. How can we manage our own stress? Do you have one or two tips to manage our own stress?
Yeah, so that, being crunched for time, and I think it's really important here, to recognize that there is a big percentage of the population now that are finding way less time than they even had before this. So there are people whose workplaces are, in the front lines or supporting the front lines, or just their workplace has amped up. And because they're at home, they're not finding they have the quiet time of the commute to and from. The workday is bleeding right into dinner time and all of that kind of stuff. So that's a very, very real reality for some of the population. And then you have another part of the population that actually isn't working as much and is at home. So it's very hard to kind of prescribe one thing that fits all for everyone.
That's right.
But again, I would ask for that perspective of 5 years from now, and one of the things that I've been thinking about and working with people is to recognize that this is not a sprint. It's closer to a marathon. And if you think about how a marathoner prepares for that marathon, right, they really have to fill their bucket. They really have to fill their gas tank. And this whole situation has kind of, sprung a leak in many of our gas tanks just to begin with, because it's so uncertain. So trying to find ways, micro ways or big ways, to actually top up the personal gas tank is important.
So what,
I'm a huge fan of mindfulness practices. For me, that is really it's a core piece. There are many apps that you can get. Calm, CALM.com is one. Headspace is another one. Mind Shift is another one, very specifically geared around anxiety. And if you go onto those apps, you can find as much as like a 3-minute mindfulness, breath kind of thing. So little increments to put into your day. The other thing I think that in particular around people who are home with kids and this idea of not being able to get any quiet time to yourself, I think there's an opportunity to talk to kids about actually needing some alone time for yourself, even for them. Maybe this idea of creating calm corners for everyone in the house, and actually saying like, mommy right now does need 5 minutes in her calm corner. And also it's another emotional, intelligence tool that, when kids do get upset or frustrated or something, the opportunity to figure out what helps them to soothe themselves down from that intense emotion versus us always being the one that soothes it. So what does a calm corner look like for, a 5-year-old, for a 10-year-old, for a 15-year-old? My daughter actually reorganized her room at the very beginning of this, and we brought a chair in and a lamp and a blanket, and that's a place for her to go and journal and read and do some stuff like that. It's very different than my son's, which is like, in a corner, like it's like a little fort, But mom can actually model, and dad can model, I need 5 minutes now in my calm corner. And I even did this with my kids when they started to transition out of napping, that even that time of the day, nap time, you didn't have to sleep, but this was, quiet alone time.
Quiet time.
We were going to do that, right? So even though we weren't sleeping, it was still in our room, quiet alone and reading books. So there's an opportunity to, again, think about how do you model this. It's okay to say mom actually does need, or dad does need alone time.
Right. What I'm doing also with my kids, and I feel like really it helps me, is they go on a recess time outside, which will leave us to talk about education in a minute. But by me sending them outside to play outside for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever time we are doing, it helps me also just to drink a big glass of water, take a deep breath, maybe put a song in my ear and just like try to have this quiet time. And that's thanks to you, because you are really making me think differently on how I can do things. So the next question, exactly what you and I talked about last week. Again, I am not a teacher. I have no idea how to homeschool my kids. And I only have 2, thank God. Don't know how I would do it if I had more. But they're different age. So one is 10, almost. One is 5.
Yeah.
I mean, the 10 years old, she knows roughly what to do and how to do it because she has the guidance from her teacher. My 5-year-old, I have no idea, and I don't know how to teach him. So last week I was extremely overwhelmed with all this anxiety and expectation that I need him to do well because he's starting grade 1 next year. Yeah. And you said something that just resonated with me, and we have put it in practice, and I must say I love it. So please tell us.
Yeah, so I think what we talked about, and again, it goes back to this idea of perspective, right? So, and this was very much a question that I asked myself because, like you, I've got kids who are trying to engage in online learning and that kind of thing. And in fact, my daughter and I had a conversation last night because she's in grade 7, and she's wondering about the application process in grade 8 to some of the alternative high schools where they use grade 7 grades around the entry. And she's starting to wonder, like, what's going to happen? How am I being evaluated? All that kind of stuff. So it is really real, right? But the question, I asked myself again is, if when I look back 5 years on this, what do I want to be able to say was true? And what came really clear to me was I wanted to make sure that through this period, relationships were maintained, if not strengthened. Okay. So that's relationships with my kids, my spouse, all of that kind of stuff. And here's what I know in my house is that if I step from the unique parent-child role into the other unique student-teacher role, the parent-child relationship will be impacted. Okay. I know that because I I'm a really good skier. And when we started to put our kids on skis, I learned really fast to hire somebody to teach them to ski. Okay. Right. And I think many people can relate to that. I'm not a teacher either. So the thought is, okay, how do I stay in my parenting role of supporting their learning? Okay. And how do I make sure coming out of this, we have a nice, strong relationship? Because the reality is, first of all, every kid, is in the same boat, right? So it's not like a situation where all of a sudden my kid is out of school for 3 months, 4 months, and then being injected back in, right? So that's a piece. And then I also said to myself, well, what's going to be most important? Let's just say that they do land into school whenever it starts up again, and they had some hiccups. They have some trouble, right? What I know I want to be able to have happen is them come home and talk to mom about that. I don't want to have impacted so much our relationship by becoming the teacher that they can't ask me for help, right? That's right. So that's one lens for sure around this. The other lens I think that I looked at is I read like the advisory from the Ministry of Ontario about how many hours, right? Yes. Of actual learning the kids are supposed to be doing. And when I think about, I did a ton of volunteering in primary grades. And when I think about how many transitions there are all day, so if you think about getting to school and getting the snow pants and everything off and circle time and attendance and then recess and back and lunch, like the actual instruction, what they call instructional learning time, and you look at how many hours they're supposed to be, like this is not an 8-hour-a-day thing, right? Is another piece about it. And then the other thing I think that has always been really important to me, and I know it's really interesting, like when I get a report card, the first thing I spend all my time on is the learning skills page. That's that page that identifies like 6, like self-regulation, independent learning, collaboration, all of those kinds of things. I really look at how that's working for my kids, and then I go and I look at the grades in math and English and all of that kind of stuff. I actually think what's happening for these kids right now is an incredible opportunity to be learning and growing really meaningful life skills that are going to serve them for the rest of their lives. In fact, I really feel like this generation of kids are almost at risk of not developing some of these skills. And what do I mean by that? I mean like time management. I mean dealing with boredom, right? We have a whole generation that is at risk of not being able to handle the discomfort of boredom that eventually we all have to deal with, right? Yes. So that's another lens. And when you look at it from a lens of life skills, then homeschooling becomes something completely different, right? So, for example, in our house, you want to bake something, that counts as math and science.
I love that. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right? My son, has discovered rock band. Well, there's a music class, right? Like, he's, and because I think we've been flexible, they sort of responded really flexible. We've had a guitar kicking around this house for as long as these kids have been alive. My son has picked that up and gotten on YouTube and has started to try and figure out how to teach himself the guitar. That's not just a music class, right? Like there's math because you count notes. Yes. There's patterning. There's all kinds of things, right? Yes. I think, Gemma, you shared that your son is helping you to pick out your outfit in the morning, right?
That's right. I did this and
right?
He loves it.
And so we talked
today. How do you like
it?
It?
So we talked about that. If you're first of all, if your kid is, in senior kindergarten or below, 100% of the curriculum is play-based. So if your kid is breathing, they're learning, right? But think about all the micro skills involved with working with mom to pick an outfit out, right? Like he's learning, to make choices. He's recognizing colors. He's recognizing patterns. He's like all kinds of things are happening there, right? So just opening up that lens a little bit and thinking about it from a life skill. Right? What's that?
And spending the time together as well.
Yeah, exactly.
One-on-one.
Exactly. And I think that that's the other lens that is to look through is if you think about all of these questions, right? Even the sort of like, how do I fill my bucket? Well, like I think I've shared this with you. I use the Calm app. Our kids, we lie in bed at night and we do the 10-minute mindfulness together. We're lying in bed, like I will tell you, there's a lot of fidgeting. There's a lot of, but that's something we do together, right? So it allows me to get a piece of what I need but we actually do it together, right? So can we do yesterday we actually all did a yoga video together.
Oh,
Again,
nice.
like as somebody who does a lot of yoga, I was looking over and going, oh God. Like, but we were doing it together, right?
It's gym.
Yeah, right? Like that kind of stuff. So if you need something for you, is there an opportunity to be flexible around? Is there an opportunity of involving others? Can I line up a couple of needs to come together? We need to make dinner every night.
Right. So the really struck me last week when we talked about it was, don't be so hard on yourself. You're doing what you can with what you have, and what is important right now for all of us, not just me, not just my husband, not just you, not just them. It's really to be together and build strong relationship together, and the learning is going to come.
Totally. Our little motto, and I've said it 100 times a day, is like best effort.
Yes.
Just best effort is good enough. And your best effort in any moment may be different than it was yesterday.
That's right. But we always have this kind of expectation that we need to do it perfectly. Because I remember last week I was really in that place where I thought, oh my gosh, if I don't do this correctly, then next year they're going to be behind. And I loved what you said, and we have changed it. It's not easy to implement it. We are changing every day. It's step-by-step procedure. Mm-hmm. It's not like, oh, okay, yeah, tomorrow everything is going to be fine. No, it's not like that. And it's also really exactly what you said. You do what you can.
Yeah, and I think too, if we can adopt sort of that mindset around, and that's part of the positive mindset, is like, what skill, whatever we're dealing with, like you say, you're implementing kind of a change, which means that it's a bit bumpy. It means that we're going to learn something, it's going to work, it's not going to work, we're going to adjust. If you kind of step out of that from a perspective and look at what skills a child develops in seeing that, right? And you think about fast forwarding them to their adult life when they are in a job where maybe there's a big change that has come,
right.
Or they need to try something new or whatever, like those are actually micro skills that are happening, right? In that moment. And if there's any, one of the things I think that we could offer our children now is, because there is so much uncertainty, and as we know where we are at our stage in life, none of us really saw this 12 months ago, saw this pandemic coming. Never would we have imagined this, so we're having to deal with it, but the world really is a pretty uncertain place, from one moment to the other. So helping our kids to increase their comfort level with the uncertainty of the world, right? I think that's a huge gift. That is resilience, right? That is grit, right? So, maybe the most meaningful lesson is that, imperfection is in itself beauty, is in itself growth, is in itself, really what we need. So, I can manage through this in my imperfect way.
Yes.
And we'll be okay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and for telling everybody some tips. And it was really wonderful having you here.
Oh, it's really great to chat with you today, Gemma. Thank you so much. And I just want to recognize the courage and the flexibility that you're showing in having these kind of conversations and bringing these topics to people in the way that you do. So thank you for the chance to.
Well, thank you very much, and talk to you very soon.
Thanks.